Welcome to another edition of Around the Table with Stacy Smith as we take a look at the economy and investing. With just a few days left, we are ready to close out the year, and what a year it has been. As of the close on Friday, the Dow is now down nearly 10% for the year, and that is the good news. The S&P 500 is down nearly 20%, and the NASDAQ is near the low of the year, tumbling 34.5%. So what caused this big drop, and will 2023 be any better? Well, that's something we're going to discuss now as I start to introduce you to my panel of experts, of financial advisors, and analysts. I would like you to meet Carrie Coghill. Carrie is the president and CEO of Coghill Investment Strategies, which is headquartered here in Pittsburgh. She is recognized as one of the nation's leading voices on financial advising. As we go around the table, we find Frank Rossetti. Frank has been advising clients in the Pittsburgh region for 50 years, and Frank has helped to establish Harvest Financial, where he is the executive chairman. With a seat at the table also is Kim Forrest. Kim is the Chief Investment Officer and the founder of Boca Capital Partners. Kim has a dual background in both finance and in software engineering, and you may have seen Kim in her many appearances on Fox Business News, CNBC, and also on Bloomberg. Also joining us is a name familiar to a lot of people in Pittsburgh. That is Bob Fragasso. Bob has been in the investment advisory business for 50 years and is the chairman and chief executive officer of Fragasso Financial Advisors. I trust all of you had a nice Christmas.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Well, let's move on then. Frank, we have talked about it all year. It was as it was happening, but now with a chance to take a look back, the big question is really what did happen? Was it just an inopportune time that everything converged?
The choice of the word inopportune is interesting. I think inopportune moments were a year ago when free money, record corporate profits and profit margins, what seemed to be wind down of COVID, world peace, extraordinary savings rates, falling unemployment rates, et cetera, et cetera. That was a convergence of pretty much all good news. And bad news is very difficult to find. But since then, some, but not all, the good stuff has begun to unwind. You know, bird flu has disrupted the production of eggs. The war, of course, has messed up the supply chain, which had enough problems to begin with. We've had inflation partially because of that, and the big daddy of all of them, interest rates, have risen significantly, causing the values of assets to draw down. I'm not so sure that these things are going to go away or changing. We will have very close watch on the corporate earnings front. I think that is possibly the next shoe to drop. They've drawn down about 10% at this point. The question is there more fall in the corporate earnings or not? Remains to be seen. The retail sales numbers were reasonable, but pretty much somewhat affected by inflation. The third quarter, which was an eternity ago, was revised upward on GDP. I'm not sure, the market loved that. I'm not sure what the end of September has to do with now. We're almost into 2023. And we'll start to look at the fourth quarter here in a week or two. It'll be very interesting to see how it plays out, but I tend to think we're looking at opportunity being created, not inopportune moments.
So I also think the end of COVID is the beginning of something else. And probably one of the things coming out of COVID that I think every company, no matter how large or small, they were affected by is the supply chain, the dreaded supply chain. And it looks like absolutely all roads go through China. And I think we are now discovering that maybe that's a bad idea to have all of our so-called eggs in one basket. And I think that companies might have to spend over the next 10 years to reconfigure the supply chain. And it's not all going to come to the US. It's going to be, as it should be, a dispersed supply chain. Some in Asia, some in Europe, some in North America, some in South America. And that's just to eliminate what happened in COVID, which is one part of the world shuts down and we can't get anything.
So
Stacy.
Kim,
Oh, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was going to kind of add to what Kim was saying, and it's a very, very interesting point, because we always have to ask the question, and then what? And when we look at the reasons why the supply chains were in China, it was because of cheap labor. So what does that mean? If we have to now diversify our supply chains and move it all around the world, you know, it's an inflationary, potentially an inflationary event. So we need to keep our eye on that. But here's the good news about 2022 is that we can explain it. You know, we understand it. You don't have the crystal ball, but this is an economic cycle. It's supply, it's demand, it's, you know, when you look at money and the supply of money. So it gives us as advisors confidence of knowing that at least we can understand what's happening and create some probable outcomes for what we might expect going into next year.
Stacy, the picture you created at the onset of your question, this is no different than past downturns. Even the dispersion among the indices, this is a classic downturn, with the larger indices being down 10 and 20%. The causative factors are no different than the similar causative factors of other downturns. So let me ask the question, what happens after a downturn? And that's what we have to position ourselves for. If we're investing only for the short term, you shouldn't be investing. If you're investing for the intermediate to longer term, it's a great opportunity. Look to your portfolios, do your asset allocation properly, make your selections intelligently, and then wait for the history is not guaranteed to repeat itself, but it's our best guide. If we believe that, then wait for the rewards that'll come.
If you
Mike-
look at this, you've got as Bob's trying to say, we've got opportunity being created. Kim mentioned the supply chain being dispersed around the world. That's going to take money. That's going to create investment opportunities. And to me, it's an exciting time. I think this drawdown that we've seen has created great opportunity to have decent returns going forward. Probably not in the first quarter of 2023, maybe, but probably not. But over the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 years, I think it's going to be a very profitable time for investors.
And I'm going to issue a note of caution. Don't go back to the trough on the things that were working before the end of the world happened, right? I'm kidding about the end of the world, but you know, don't go back to the FANGs. They probably, and that's Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix. You can have some of those, but don't think that they're going to just pick up and resume leadership. The world's a different place. Consumers are different. And I think that that's how you have to look through your investing lens is who's going to win in the next 10 years, not who won in the last 10 years.
All right.
Over concentration is wrong regardless. I'm sorry, Stacy, you want to leave. So regardless of what you're choosing, it should be diversified. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's all right. That's great. Good way to wrap up that segment. And we'll be back in just a moment.